Hey, what's up everybody? How's everyone doing out there today? Welcome back to Wildcat MTG, and it is time for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, which means it is also time for the top 10 cards that I am most excited to play with. I've done a bunch of these now. I try to do them for every new set that's going to be bringing us a whole host of new cards. So I don't really do them for things like master sets or heavy reprint sets, but a lot of the standard sets, and of course, you know, the straight to modern sets or something like that. I like to do these lists. And again, I want to reiterate, for me, this isn't a list of like the most powerful cards per se, or even the most valuable cards. I think the power level of cards is really going to be determined. You know, it's going to vary depending on which format we're talking about. So just, you know, creating a list of saying, hey, here's the flat out, you know, top 10 most powerful cards is really, really difficult to do. But instead, for me, this is the cards that really jumped off the page for me as cards that are brand new that I am excited to throw in a deck and try out for myself. Along that note, Lost Caverns is going to be bringing us a whole host of really good quality reprints, and I think that's important. Like, I'm happy that we're getting strong reprints like Resplendent Angel or Cavern of Souls or Treasure Map or Growing Rites of Illimak or even Gishath. But to me, those are cards that, you know, we've seen before and we've played with before. So this isn't going to include, you know, really reprints. This is going to focus on a list of the cards that are going to be new for us. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and dive on in and let's get into this top 10 here. So starting off my list today, I have Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. This is a 1 colorless and 1 blue mana for a 2/1 flash flyer that reads, whenever Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it, draw a card, then discard a card, and then if there are 4 more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost. So the thing that really immediately resonates with me on this card is the flash thing. The ability to play this on your opponent's end step early in the game and then untap and have mana up to either, counter something that counter your opponent's removal, or, play dive down or slip out the back or something to protect Malcolm, I think really gives this card a lot of juice. When you do hit somebody with it and you get a chorus counter on it, you get to loot, so you're drawing yourself into better answers, you're digging for better answers, and then if you can whittle your opponent down and then get to the 4th chorus counter on there, the ability to play free spells and use those as discard draw spells that then draw you more cards seems really good. And, let's not forget that when we got Phyrexia sets that we got Proliferate, there was a lot more cheap Proliferate in there. So I wouldn't be like totally shocked to see Malcolm used in a way where you hit somebody and get the first chorus counter and then kind of like proliferate your way part of the way to get you to the 4th chorus counter so that you can start getting free spells out of it. I just thought it was a really neat card. So I really like Malcolm the Alluring Scoundrel. The number 9 card on my list today is Wail of the Forgotten. It's a 2-drop sorcery. It's 1 blue and 1 black, and it's got Descend 8, and it says choose 1. If there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard as you cast a spell, choose 1 or more instead. So it's got 3 modes, and it's got Descend 8. So if you have 8 or more permanents, then you can choose all of the modes if you want. And the 3 modes are return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, target opponent discards a card, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. So I really like this card just because I think it's really flexible. I really wish it was instant speed. The sorcery aspect of it does kind of drop it down a notch, but there's a lot of value here, right? So especially if you get to the point where you have 8 or more permanents and you're able to essentially utilize all 3 modes to bounce a target non-land permanent, force your opponent to draw a card, discard a card, and then look at the top 3 cards of your library and put 1 of them into your hand, that's obviously very, very good value. Even as an early game play, when you're still trying to stack your graveyard with cards to get to that Descend mode, the 3rd mode on it allows you to look at the top 3, put 1 in your hand, and then put 2 in your graveyard. So the early game version of this allows you to sort of help start to stack your graveyard until you actually get to that Descend 8. And then again, the value there of being able to bounce a permanent, have your opponent discard a card, and essentially you draw a card. Really, really cool card. I think it's really flexible, and I think it's going to be able to fit in some different shells, particularly like a kind of a control type fashion. So Wail of the Forgotten is a card that I'm actually really looking forward to utilizing. At number 8, I have the first creature card on my list today, and that is Sanguine Evangelist. That is a 2 colorless and 1 white mana for a 2/1 vampire cleric that has Battle Cry. So for those of you who might not be familiar with what Battle Cry is, it says whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Additionally, when Sanguine Evangelist enters the battlefield or dies, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So, I like ETB stuff, right? I don't know how much the vampire or the cleric types will be relevant to it, but just as a value creature, the fact that it's a 2/1 and that brings in another 1/1 flyer with it is really good. The battle cry aspect, the ability to essentially pump the troops. So if it does survive and if you swing with it, you end up swinging with it as a 3/1 and then your 2/1, your flyer as a 2/1. So it's getting 5 power onto the battlefield. And then when it dies on the way out, if your opponent says, "Nah, enough of that, we don't really need that to have, to be around," it still replaces itself with another 1/1 black bat token with the flyer. So you're getting 2 1/1 flyers out of it, assuming there's no exile effect to it. That seems like really good value. It's a card that, of course, then plays well out of the graveyard because it's got an ETB. It's a card that plays well with any blink strategy because of the ETB. So just as a value creature, I think, 3 for a 2/1 that's giving you other 1/1 flyers, no less, so they've got evasion, is really, really strong. I think this card is actually pretty good, and wouldn't be shocked to see it see constructed play either. My number 7 card on my list today is Molten Collapse. This is a 1 black, 1 red sorcery that says choose one, and if you descended this turn, you may choose both instead. So the first mode is destroy target creature or planeswalker, and the second mode is destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with a mana value 1 or less. So, I think this immediately slots into the modern Scam deck, and I know what everyone's thinking. Thank goodness Scam finally got some toys and some answers. Or why did Scam get something else that it really didn't need to be even better, right? Molten Collapse is, it's a strictly better Dreadbore. And Dreadbore was a really efficient removal spell for a long time. I don't know the last time I saw anybody running Dreadbore in like a modern deck nowadays. But if you're going to give Rakdos basically the one of the 2 most powerful decks in modern, an even better answer, because now it gives you an efficient removal for a creature or planeswalker, and it allows them to get rid of things like Colossus Hammer or Amulet of Vigor. Like, that is a really powerful card. And by the way, there's no dead cards in Scam either, because it's both red and black, so you can still pitch to Fury and you can still pitch it to Grief. I think Molten Collapse is a really insanely good card. As somebody who enjoys playing that particular deck, the reason I'm excited about it is, I'll be slotting a couple copies of this into my Scam deck, and off to the races we go. So at number 7, Molten Collapse. Next up on my list today is Quetzal Malame Exemplar, and I could be saying that incorrectly, so I apologize if I've horribly butchered it, but this is a 3-drop. That's 1 colorless, 1 green, and 1 white, 3/3 Cat Warrior. A legendary creature, and it says when your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, and whenever 1 or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, for me, right off the bat, I really like it. It's good. It's a good rate. 3 for a 3/3 is a good rate. It's not a great rate in 2023 Magic, but it is a good rate. Also, the ability to, stop your opponents from casting spells during your turn. Now, they can still use, activated abilities or things like that of artifacts or creatures, but shutting down spell casting on your turn is a big, big plus side for me. And then, of course, if your creatures are getting buffs, either whether it's through Anthem effects or through pump spells or something like those lines, you're able to essentially draw cards, which is really good, I think, for an aggressive strategy. For me, this is a card that I look forward to putting in like a Jetmir type deck or something along those lines as far as a commander deck is concerned. I also have a couple other decks I think it would slide into, just because just locking your opponents out of your turn so that you can do things freely without having to worry about them casting spells, I think is a huge upside. It's a really, really good, and by the way, it's an uncommon too. So I really like this card. Also, Cat Warrior, yay me! And that is the number 6 card on my list today. So here we are, we have reached the top 5 already, and at number 5 we have Echoing Deep. So we have a rare land on the list today, and it is a cave. Cave is being, for Lost Caverns of Ixalan, we have a whole cave cycle, but we have a rare cave here that says you may have Echoing Deeps enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land card in a graveyard, except it's a cave in addition to those other types, and then of course it also taps for a colorless mana. So right off the bat, like, what sticks out to me is what kind of crazy stuff can I copy with Echoing Deeps, and the thing that immediately came to mind was like, well, can I bin a Dark Depths so that I can essentially, like, similar to what you do with Thespian Stage where you copy the Dark Depths, except you don't have counters on it. So if you get Dark Depths in your graveyard for some reason, or if you can put it there intentionally, Echoing Deeps comes into a play as a copy of it, and it comes in with no counter, so you've got yourself a 2020 Flying Indestructible Merit Lage token. I think also it has a lot of other practical uses. If you cycle one of your Triomes, then it's in the graveyard, and you just have Echoing Deeps as enter as a copy of that as well. Obviously, it can echo any dual land or something along those lines. I think it's a very versatile card. I think it's a very cool card. But I'm also interested in hearing about what other crazy shenanigans people can do with this card as well. Obviously, the Dark Depths thing stuck out to me, and that's something I can't wait to try out myself. The number 4 card on my list of cards that I'm most excited to play with, and this card really is a card that I cannot wait to try out myself, is Chimmel the Inner Sun. So this is a 6 mana value legendary artifact that says spells you control can't be countered. That's just the first line of it. And then at the beginning of your end step, discover 5. So discover is one of the new mechanics that we're getting from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. It plays a lot like Cascade, so whatever the discover number is, you exile the top card of your library until you exile a non-land card with the mana value equal to your discover card or less. Now one of the big differences for discover is that you can cast it without paying its mana cost, similar to Cascade, or you can put it in your hand and then you put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card for 6 mana makes it so that your spells cannot be countered, and then every turn at the end of your turn, you get to discover 5, so you get to essentially cascade 5. Huge upside card. I think it's very powerful. My thing about it is if your opponents are playing counter spells, like I can't imagine that they're going to want you to resolve this. So it just feels like this card has a huge target on its back, is like get it off the battlefield or don't let it on the battlefield to begin with. But that doesn't mean that it won't wreak havoc when it does, and I'm here for all of it. So Chimmel the Inner Sun is a card that I will definitely be acquiring copies of to throw in a bunch of various decks. So I have to say that I'm really excited about going back to Ixalan and getting to play with Lost Caverns of Ixalan, because I wasn't playing Magic during the time of the first Ixalan block, so I didn't really get to enjoy any of those cards. I was out of Magic at the time, and I came back during Guilds of Ravnica, so I kind of missed the whole dinosaur thing. And, at my core, I enjoy big stompy creatures. And so one of the things I'm really excited about this time around is getting to play with those. And the number 3 card on my list is Trumpeting Carnosaur. This card is awesome, right? Very similar to Carnage Tyrant. Again, a card that I didn't really get a chance to play with, but I was kind of aware of its presence when it was getting ready to rotate out and I was coming back. Trumpeting Carnosaur is a 6-drop, so it's 4 colorless and 2 red mana for a 7/6 trampler, and it says when Trumpeting Carnosaur enters the battlefield, discover 5. Additionally, one of the things about dinosaurs is that while they're big top-end creatures, you also have to live long enough to be able to play them, right? Which can be a challenge, and Trumpeting Carnosaur kind of helps with that. It's got a 2 colorless mana and 1 red mana ability. You can discard Trumpeting Carnosaur from your hand. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So it does help with some early game removal. What I like about this card is that you can pitch it as early game removal, but then also the Discover piece of it, we kind of talked about it, Discover being a lot like Cascade, but in this case, on this card, it's an ETB effect. So when this card ETBs, when Trumpeting Carnosaur ETBs, you get to Discover 5, which makes this a really premium reanimation target, because you can pitch it to kill one of your opponent's creatures and then turn around and reanimate it, and you've got a 7/6 trampler on the battlefield, and on top of that you get to discover 5 when it ETBs. A really menacing card, a really cool rare, and I'm psyched about Trumpeting Carnosaur, and I will definitely be throwing some of these in some decks as well. My number 2 card that I'm most excited about from Lost Caverns of Ixalan is Ozhur-Tok Deepest Foundation. So for the mythic cycle for this set, we've got a whole cycle of gods, and Ozhur-Tok is the white one. It's a 6 mana value, so it's 4 colorless and then double white for 6/6 vigilance, so pretty good stats. And then it also says if 1 or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead, which is absolutely insane. Additionally, all the gods have some sort of when it dies clause, kind of typical of god cards in Magic, right? They're either indestructible or when they die, something else happens. And this one says when Ozhur-Tok dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. So, obviously 6 for a 6/6 vigilance is pretty good stats. And then creating triple creature tokens is absolutely bananas. When it does transform, if it dies, it transforms into Temple of Civilization. So it becomes a land. You can tap it for white mana, and then you can also pay 2 colorless and white mana to tap it and transform Temple of Civilization. So you can transform it basically back to a god. Activate only if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn and only as a sorcery. So there's a couple things. Gods aren't what they used to be because indestructible or dies effects are less relevant when some of the most premium removal in the terms of board wipes is Farewell or Sunfall, things that exile creatures, so you don't get to flip it into a land if it doesn't die, right? Additionally, I think with Ozurtok, attacking with 3 or more creatures can be a little bit challenging, so flipping it back can be a little bit more challenging, but just the idea that it's 6 for 6/6 vigilance that also creates triple tokens whenever you're creating a creature token is absolutely crazy, right? I think that this has some strong possibilities to it. I think it's going to probably also be a pretty valuable card as well. Fits into a lot of token strategies and is just a really good creature as well. So that is my number 2 card. And finally, at number 1, the card from Lost Caverns of Ixalan that I am the most excited about is Ghalta Stampede Tyrant. So I mentioned, at my core, I am a stompy person. I really enjoy swinging with big, beefy creatures. And Ghalta is no exception to that, right? So Ghalta is an 8-drop that's 5 colorless and triple green for a 12/12 trample. Stats well above the curve, right? 8 for a 12/12 trample, so you're automatically getting good stats. But, of course, that's not the easiest thing to get in the battlefield, so hopefully there's some more payoffs, right? Well, it's a legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, cool. And when Ghalta Stampede Tyrant enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. That doesn't say X mana value or less. That just says whatever creatures you want to dump from your hand onto the battlefield, have at it. The thing that I cannot wait to try out myself is cheating Ghalta into play so I can essentially cheat the rest of my hand into play. However that looks like, whether it's a reanimation, whether it's some sort of Elvish Piper effect where I get to just put a creature from my hand onto the battlefield, whatever the case may be, Ghalta is... I have so many plans for this card. I also just wonder if it's actually going to be able to see other play as well. But I have so many plans for this card. This was a card when I saw it being previewed, I was like, yep, I want that card. I want to have many copies of that card, and I will be playing with that card. So that is it. That is my list. That is my top 10 cards that I am most excited for. Now I want to hear from you. What are the cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan that you were jazzed about, that you cannot wait to throw in some of your decks? Let me know in the comments, and that's going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor. If you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button for me, hit the like button for me, and by all means, drop me some comments. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much, and happy pre-release, everybody.